This is Super Yacht News with E. Sisman.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So our first story today is about Roman Abramovich. This has been in quite a number of news articles recently over the last few days. We wanted to go through it and a little bit more before we talked about it here. The story originates from the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. They published an article about Roman Abramovich's practices with his yachts. They report that he registered his yachts as commercial vehicles under a sham cruise scheme that helped him dodge millions of euros in tax. So what we're going to do is we're going to read a little from the article and then we'll break it down on the other side. So leaked documents seen by the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, the BBC and The Guardian show that several of the Russian oligarchs' yachts were supposedly being used for business purposes. In fact, Abramovich was simply hiring the boats from himself through a series of companies he also owned, allowing him to falsely claim a VAT exemption for maritime businesses and evade levies on fuel, provisions, and maintenance and other costs. The papers also show agents for Abramovich discussing their intention to dodge VAT on the entire price of the superyachts themselves, which could have amounted to tens of millions of euros. The documents, part of the Cyprus Confidential project led by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists and Paper Trail Media, show how members of Abramovich's network created a fake cruise business on his behalf and deliberately tried to cover their tracks. Now, Professor Lars Hummel of the International Tax Institute said that if someone conceals the private use of a yacht because it would otherwise be subject to VAT, that is clearly tax evasion. The documents show these superyachts were each owned by separate companies registered in the British Virgin Islands, which were in turn all owned by a single trust, and the trust ultimately belonged to Abramovich. The yachts themselves were registered in Bermuda, first as other cargo/yachts, then later as commercial yachts, and finally as passenger vessels, a category used, for instance, by ferry operators. Now, just a quick word on that. That is not necessarily shady or illegal. Any yacht can be registered as a commercial yacht. In fact, let's take, for example, motor yacht Loon. That vessel, because it's a charter yacht, must be registered as a commercial vessel. You can't have a private yacht running a charter business. So that they're not trying to deceive just based on the fact that they registered the vessel as a commercial vessel. And also, one of them says passenger vessel there. Abramovich's yacht Eclipse can carry, depending on which article you read or which place you get your information, it says his vessel can carry 36 guests. Now, 36 guests is the maximum amount of guests you can carry on a passenger yacht. If it's any more than that, then it actually goes up into the passenger vessel status. Now, I've seen some articles that say that yacht has 24 cabins. So that would be 48 guests. If it was able to carry 48 guests, then it would have to be registered as a passenger vessel. Each of the BVI companies then leased the boats out to a company based in Cyprus called Blue Ocean Yacht Management. These agreements were long-term and cost Blue Ocean millions of dollars per year. They granted Blue Ocean control of the yachts, and in turn, it leased the boats out for week-long cruises, generating huge profits it could then use to pay for maintenance, repairs, and fuel tax-free. At its peak, Blue Ocean was spending $40 million a year on these operational costs. Leaked documents show that the customers hiring the yachts were simply another set of BVI companies, all of which again ultimately belonged to Abramovich. It meant Abramovich was essentially the yacht owner, the service provider, and the customer. He was thereby falsely claiming a tax exemption for companies whose use of the vessels is central to their business, such as ferry or boat hire operators. If acting above board, a commercial operator will charge its customers VAT for renting out the yachts for leisure purposes. It then collects this VAT and passes it on to the authorities in the EU country where it's owed. Leaked documents and court records show that for Abramovich's yachts, this didn't happen. Blue Ocean claimed its customers The set of BVI companies which chartered the yachts out for cruises were also commercial operators and therefore exempt from paying VAT. Now it goes on to talk about the people who set it up, and it appears to show that the people knew what they were doing. We'll go back to the article. An email sent while the scheme was being set up makes clear that its participants knew what they were doing. Writing to a group of Abramovich's associates, Blue Ocean director Jonathan Holloway said the people involved in the structure must be aware of the risks. Holloway then spelled it out. We want to avoid paying VAT on the purchase price of the yachts, and where possible to avoid paying VAT on the goods and services provided to the yachts. Our structure must as clearly as possible separate the different parties so that an investigator checking out our operation would see it as a legitimate structure. But we also have to recognise that a determined investigator could eventually discover this is an in-house structure with the possible consequences that would entail. Approached for comment, Holloway said he used structures that others in the industry were using and that he can't be expected to remember what happened in this case 20 years ago. The old I don't recall argument. Now, if VAT needed to be paid on either the construction, purchase or import of the yachts, the potential tax bill would have been enormous. The Eclipse alone carried an estimated price tag of 370 million euros, while Luna was worth around 290 million euros. The VAT on importing the yachts into the EU waters without any exemptions would amount to around 100 million euros. That's even a lot of money for a billionaire. All right, so what I have to say is my own personal experience. This is not an isolated incident. Like Holloway says that he was using structures that others were using. I believe that. I'm not saying that that's not a defense for him. I'm just saying that I believe that other yachts were doing it too. But one of the first yachts I worked on, we were a new yacht, and we were at the Monaco Yacht Show. I actually mentioned it last year in the Monaco Yacht Show videos. I said I was on a larger yacht than the one that the yacht show claimed was the largest charter yacht ever to go to Monaco. And I said that I think I'd been on a larger one, but I didn't argue with them. And part of the reason why is because the yacht I was on, we went to Monaco, we had brokers on board, they were walking around, and I said, why have we got brokers on board? And they said, because we're setting it, the yacht's being set up as a charter yacht. I said, oh, we're going to do charters. They said, no, the owner's not going to charter it, he's just setting it up as a charter yacht. So clearly, now back then I didn't really understand exactly what that meant. It gives you an idea of what they were probably setting up themselves. So when Mr. Holloway says that other people are using those structures, I completely believe it. There are many other ways for avoiding paying taxes in the industry. A lot of the stuff that they're talking about, importing yachts into the EU, there are ways to get around that legitimately. So for instance, let's say I'm Italian and I buy a yacht, I'm a billionaire and I buy a yacht. Now, if I buy it in my name, I'm Italian, therefore I have to put an Italian flag on my yacht, right? And then I have to pay all of those taxes. So if I build it in the EU, let's say I build it in Italy, then I'm liable to pay taxes on my yacht. However, that's not what happens. People don't register yachts in their own name. That's not the only reason. There are liability reasons, insurance reasons. But what they do is they say, well, we'll set up a company in the British Virgin Islands. We'll register that. That's another way that me as an Italian can have a British flag on my ship because I'm now registered in the British Virgin Islands. And now when my yacht is built in Italy, as long as that yacht leaves Italy within, I think it's 60 days from it being delivered, I don't have to pay tax on that vessel. Now, when you see vessels going to, they used to go to Christiansand when they came out of Germany in the north, in the Baltic, they would come out and then they would go to Christiansand for a few days and then they would sail around and go into the Med. Now, since the UK has left the EU, now they're sailing more often now to the UK, and you'll see brand new yacht on its first maiden voyage to the UK. A few days later, it heads down to Gibraltar and then refuels and then it heads into the EU. Well, that's all done to avoid paying tax, right? So the yacht has come out of Germany. The owner might be, let's say he's French, you know, he doesn't want to pay that tax. His company's in the British Virgin Islands, his yacht's registered in the Cayman Islands, therefore it's not a European vessel. So the vessel sails out of Europe for a few days and then goes straight back in, and they've avoided paying, 40 million euros in tax, whatever it is that boat would have been liable to pay. So there are many ways to avoid paying tax legitimately. Another thing that yachts will do, they will sit in a marina with no fuel on board. And the reason why is because they're leaving in 65 days, right? So once they get past those 60 days, they can then buy their fuel in the marina. Let's say, again, they're in Italy, buy that fuel. As long as they leave the EU with that fuel, they don't have to pay tax on that fuel. So there are many ways to avoid paying tax, and that's legitimate. That's a legal way, because the vessel is technically, it's not European, right? It's from the Cayman Islands or whatever. So I'm not sure how this case, the way they've factored in what they're talking about in this story. I hope they've factored all of that in. I'm sure they have. I'm sure they know what they're talking about, but they don't mention it in this article that Abramovich's Eclipse, for instance, because it's not registered, because he's not European, and because it's not registered in Europe, that the vessel can effectively operate in the Med. As long as it leaves the EU, once it bears fuel and stuff, they don't have to pay tax. So that's very interesting anyway. But we'll see where this goes, if it goes anywhere. Obviously, Abramovich is currently in exile in Turkey right now, living the high life out there. He's got most of his yachts out there. He's got a number of yachts. I think he had 7 at last count. His big yacht's out there, Eclipse, and most of the other vessels are out there too. So I don't think anything's going to come of it in the near future. All right, anyway, we'll move on. We'll bring you an update on that even when we have one. We'll move on to our next story now. This is about Yacht Loon. I kind of thought we'd done the last update there, at least for until some information comes out about the actual accident. This is about the tender, Real Wild. Unbelievably, until yesterday, it was still on those rocks from the 21st of December. The vessel has now been moved, as you can see in this video footage that was sent in by a source that lives locally. The vessel was stranded, like I said, on the rocks for over 5 weeks. And as you can see here, they've fitted some airbags to the vessel, and they've put some airbags underneath so they could pull that yacht off the rocks. I think they're using a small tug there. It's a 15-meter tender, and it was called Real Wild. Real was spelled R-E-E-L. Now the vessel was then towed. We understand it was towed to St. Martin, and it's currently there. It will probably be getting repairs if it's depending on how bad it is. And the vessel's still floated, so it looks like it's not too bad. So, but obviously those airbags, the orange airbags, were there just in case the vessel started to take on water. It would remain buoyant. Unbelievably, they actually pulled that boat off the rocks there while there was somebody on board. That must have been quite rocky. Oh, rocky, sorry. Now, since the incident happened on the 21st of December, as the crew were leaving after a Christmas party, the captain he appears to have parted ways with the yacht. The circumstances behind his departure are, of course, currently unknown. And as he is the owner of the YouTube channel, he has pulled all of the content from that channel. This is one of the downsides if you haven't just crashed a yacht. If you're working for a yacht and then you leave that yacht, they're most likely going to ask you to pull all the footage. It's a tricky one, because obviously you want to work on a yacht and you want to make videos on YouTube. Most of the time, yacht jobs are mutually exclusive when it comes to YouTube content. They don't want it. It's different. It's changing now because of people like myself and David Seal and the early people that were in the industry making videos. But it's a very tricky thing. And ideally, you really want to get into your contract to say that you're allowed to keep those videos, that whatever you film is yours. But when you're looking for a job, I can just see in the interview process to say, by the way, I want to make some YouTube videos and post them on board, and I want to have it written into my contract. I mean, most yachts will just not do that. So you just got to take what you can get in the industry. If they say, yeah, you can make videos as long as you don't, show this or that, then you just go, okay, great. So anyway, one last story before we go. It's quite a long one today. A video has surfaced of the yacht that caught fire in Miami last week. You remember this story? There was a legendary rap artist and hip-hop producer on board, and his name was Metro Boomin. Something tells me that's not his real name. The vessel caught fire shortly after arriving at the dockside there when they were going to a strip club called Booby Trap in Miami. It was like 3 hours after they arrived, I believe. The vessel caught fire, and the local security of that nightclub saw the fire and heard the alarms, and they went on board and pulled everybody off, or they got everybody to evacuate that yacht. The yacht later sank, as we've reported in the previous video, and it looks like it's been recovered, obviously, and they've moved that yacht, and they're probably going to take it somewhere to a scrapyard or something like that. It clearly is completely destroyed. So just thought we'd show you that. All right, guys, don't forget to check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/eSysman. There's lots and lots of videos on there now about behind the scenes stuff, about how we make these videos, how we do the green screens, how we make adverts, behind the scenes videos from trips to Europe, all kinds of stuff on there. So check it out, patreon.com/eSysman. Also, if you've got any information for us about any of these stories, any other stories, please be sure to get in touch. You can get us in the email address in the ticker. You can get us on the About page of YouTube. Get us on Instagram, on Facebook Messenger, on Twitter, and on Threema. Be sure to like this video, very important for the algorithm. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for future notifications. Okay, it's Friday, so have a great weekend, guys. Even if you're working, I hope you have a great one. And I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.